government and the Ministry of Rural Development, alongside with the Ministry of Water and Sanitation, in partnership with the Ministry of Works and Housing, are to deliver the Greater Accra Resilience and Integrated Projects in order to enhance the sustainability in addressing the flooding challenges in Ghana.
Other ministries are collaborating to deliver what we call the Greater Accra Resilience and Integrated, together 3 ministries: the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development, the Ministry of Water and Sanitation, and the Ministry of Works and Housing. Such collaborative enterprise is offering ministries the opportunity to work collaboratively, taking account of their interconnectedness. And I think that this is how ministries are supposed to operate. The days where ministries, agencies, departments work in silos appear to give way for collaborative engagement. And it's something that we believe that after the expiration of this project, we must sustain to ensure that ministries collaborate with each other where their functions intersect, to be able to deliver solutions that addresses the problems of our people. As you may be aware, there are components that are found in Gov'T that are supposed to be delivered by the Ministry of Local Government. The others, like the waste management, that is supposed to be delivered by the Ministry of Water, Resource and Sanitation. Example, 17 district assemblies or municipal assemblies are part of this, and these 17 municipal and district assemblies are under the Ministry of Local Government. And then when it comes to their waste management functions, the Ministry of Sanitation play a key role in that as well. So all these ministries, together with Ministry of Works and Housing, which has responsibility of ensuring that issues of flood is addressed in this country, is also part. So the whole project, as I have indicated, is integrated indeed, as the name suggests, Greater Accra Resilience and Integrated Development. So this morning, what we seek to do is to have an update to share with you the progress of this project.
Originally, there were 4 ministries involved, but as you see, the erstwhile Ministry of Inner City and Zonal Development has been crossed out, just depicting the fact that they no longer exist as a ministry. Next slide. So I'll provide you some information on the precursor events, the context, the inception timelines, the implementation structures, and then the progress to date. Next slide. So the precursor event for the Gov'T was from the 3rd June 2015 floods. As you are all aware, that day we had 131 millimeters of rain in 6 hours, circumstances that led us to the situation as we found ourselves. There was high tide that night, where we had and then the interceptor weir that's at Old Fadama had the flaps shut, and then of course we are very much aware that there was also a fire explosion that night. But there were also some structural causes, such as the very low gradient from Caprice to the sea, which more or less slowed down the flow of the runoffs in the channel, and it led to the ponding. As the high tide was coming inland, the runoff coming from upstream through the main channel was unable to flow to the sea. There was also some legacy sediment built up around the weir and also within the basin itself. And the continuous dumping of waste had also constrained the volume of the waste of the channel at the time. Inevitably, we had a situation where 152 lives officially were recorded as those who died from that, but 53,000 people were directly affected, and there were about 77,000 buildings that were fully or partially also affected. An assessment of the damage came to about $55 million, and an assessment of the potential cost to repair such damage came to about $115 million. Next slide. It's one of 9 basins that serves the city, or serves the Greater Accra region. The importance of the Odo Basin is that it runs centrally through the core metropolitan area. So the most built up place, the most viable commercial areas, the ones that have the largest proportions of residents. Those are the parts that the Odo Basin runs through. You know, the Odo Basin actually originates from the foothills of the Brie Mountains, runs through Abokobi, Oyarifa, through Pantine, and then comes to Hacho. Then it subsequently veers towards a bit of Taifa and Dome before coming back, turning around Alubushi, the community. And then it runs directly from there through Abelimpe, Alajo, Circle, Odona, and then into the Kole. It empties into the Kole, and then the Kole empties into the sea for a total length of about 30 kilometers, but the coverage area is about 273 square kilometers. And it serves a population of around 5 million. We need to update that statistic because the latest census shows that the population has expanded since then. To your right, you see some incidents of extensive flooding or episodes of extensive flooding from the past. And it tells you that this has been a perennial problem that has afflicted the city for years. So this is the basin that the Gov'T project is focused on. And so sometimes you hear questions related to flooding incidents that has nothing to do with the Odo Basin. Just so that everybody is aware, this is what the Gov'T project is doing. Next slide. Government invited support from the World Bank to assist in the assessment of the damage. So the figures that we got for damage assessment came from that exercise. And then subsequently, we undertook a study to see, in the event of a similar rain, what is the state of resilience of the metropolitan area? So that study is called the City Strength Diagnostic. And the City Strength Diagnostic helped us to understand the issues that confront the city in its resilience against climate change and other disasters. Then in June 2017, we were able to complete the report, and I'll show you some of the things that came out of the report in the next slide. Subsequently, we then initiated the study on if we understand the state of the resilience of the city is about a certain quantum or a certain state. What would it take, or what strategy would it take to be able to enhance the resilience of the city? And so we initiated that conversation from June 2017. And parallel to that, we also started the preparation of the project concept notes in 2017. Then in the coordinating unit, our function is to draw the strings together so that there's coherence of efforts. And then also to enable us to ensure the timely delivery. So where it is lagging, then we step in and prod whoever has to do what is required. And so that is part of the work that the project coordinating unit does. And here below the ministries, we also have what we call the project support units at the local government. So all the 17 assemblies have the project support units established, which would have functional areas like works, environmental health, would have community development, would have roads, and so all those functional areas within the assemblies, they all form part of the project support units to also enhance the implementation at the local level and coordinate better with the various stakeholders at the communities. Next slide. Just a bit about the details of the project implementation. But since we got the approval for the additional financing, it has been extended to 2027. The original for $150 million. We have a total financing amount of $350 million. Next slide. So component by component, originally we were going to do component 1, which is to be implemented by the Ministry of Works and Housing at $92 million. Component 2 at $42 million under Ministry of Sanitation and Water Resources. Component 3.1, then 3.2, originally under Ministry of Inner City and Zongo Development, but presently under the Ministry of Works and Housing. And then component 3.3, combining that, was $58.8 million. At the time, there was no allocation, but it is a mechanism that the World Bank, understanding from experience in other countries upon the occurrence of disasters, governments' inability to respond quickly for lack of resources. This component, the Contingency Emergency Response Component, which the acronym is SEC, the SEC provides opportunity for government to quickly mobilize funds from the World Bank portfolio to dedicate those funds to disasters. And Garrett was the first project that had that component in place. And then right after we became effective, we then had the outbreak of that. So it was, one could say that it was just our good luck that we had that opportunity. So the first response that government had to undertake, $65 million was immediately taken out of the guide funds and given to the Ministry of Health to lead in the COVID response program. Subsequently, so we had to do a restructuring. There was $65 million then had to be taken out of the component that was dedicated to the Ministry of Works and Housing and then allocated under the SEC. So, but with the understanding that those funds would be reimbursed from the World Bank portfolio in the subsequent cycle of funding. The other component covering overruns. So when the feasibility study, I said earlier, one of the extenuating circumstances that led to the floods of 2015 was the very shallow gradient. Now, because of the shallow gradient, it allows the sediments to settle quickly. So there's not what we call the self-cleansing capacity. The force of the runoff is not strong enough to take with it everything that falls within the basin or the channel and those sections. So every now and then you see that the Odo channel is clogged up or is silted up because of the poor gradient. So we have to have a continuous dredging program. Now, the performance-based dredging approach is a bit different from the previous or traditional dredging arrangements in the sense that the traditional arrangements, the contractors are paid exclusively by the volume that they excavate or they evacuate. On the other hand, this approach requires also that the capacity of the drain is able to meet the runoff that is coming. So if the capacity is compromised by existing sediments or sediments that have clogged, then the contractor's payment is affected by that. So it gives the contractor an incentive to continuously dredge. We have something that we call the trigger levels. So once the trigger levels are hit, the contractor is compelled to go and do the dredging, rather than just paying for evacuating some amount, and if you leave some in the basin still remains compromised. And then it will allow for easier clean out of those sections and allow for the runoff to flow. Just earlier this week, you are aware we did the groundbreaking for the Nima Paloma drain, Nima Paloma to Circle drain. The issue there had to do with, one, the size of the drain being inadequate for the coverage of the rainfall, and then also at the tail end where it flows into the Odo, these are the pedestrian markets, the configuration is such that it backs up the water whenever the water levels in the main basin are rising. So we have to change the configuration the configuration from a 90-degree entry to maybe 45 degrees or something. That would allow for easier flow concurrent with the flow from the main basin. There's also the figures as we go on. Then for the works, we have commenced on the dredging works of the Odo. Now, we couldn't thankfully, the bank has approved. But even before the approval of the bank, we were able to negotiate with the bank that for sections of the Odo where there were no compensation to be paid, we will be allowed to do the dredging there, at least to be able to reduce the overall volume of sediments in the channel, and for which the bank approved. That is what we call the unencumbered sites. The unencumbered sites amounts to 3 kilometers, and so far the contractor has dredged 1.2 kilometers. It's presently screening the dredge materials, would remove the residual dredge materials to take to the land, final disposal site. In this particular contract, one of the incentives we've given the contractor is to try to recover as much as possible the sediments that are reusable. Sometimes people are able to use some, you can be able to recover sand, and so you can be able to sell the sand, and so that's one of the incentives that the contractor, once he's able to recover the sand, it also helps us to reduce overall volumes that must go to the final disposal site. You see the image to the right, to the top, you see the start gauges being placed there. It would help the Ghana Hydro to know the levels. We also have some equipment that we have bought that would enable them to be able to see the rate, the speed at which the flows are moving, and then the rate of rise within the basin, or speed or rise. A particular location is likely to see overtopping. Once the waters go above the top of the drain, then you know that there's a likelihood of flooding in that area if the flows persist. So these are some of the equipment that we have installed there.
And enough information in respect of what the project has done so far. And I should think that but for this project, we may have, the impact of flood may have been more severe there than what we are experiencing now. So definitely Caritas has made some impact for the entire COVID response program. The expenditure has been submitted to Parliament. Members of Parliament have been properly briefed. So it is out of place for anybody to make such a suggestion. There has not been any report anywhere that says that the $65 million has been misapplied. I think the key thing is that, as Dr. Safo indicated, there was a component in this particular project that specifically allowed for contingency emergency response. And it so be that it just happened that Ghana being the first, or this being the first attempt to integrate such a component into the World Bank program, COVID struck us, and we took advantage of that. And every single penny of that money has been accounted for and presented to Parliament, the people's representative. So there's no record to that effect, and that's what I want to clarify in respect of this.
Things that we are working on fall within the Odo Basin. The Odo Basin being the 17 assemblies through which sections of the Odo and its tributaries run. So we are not working in any other place when it comes to drainage works besides the Odo Basin. I've met some MCs who are asking when is Gov'T coming to do, and they are in different parts outside of these 17 assemblies. Unfortunately, the project is not looking beyond the Odo Basin. There was a particular incident that triggered the flood, so that's the reason for doing that. In the Odo Basin, we are doing the storm drains. The big storm drains we are working on are the main channel, which is the Chimota Abofu section, the Nima Paloma section, Kaneshi Lot 1 and Lot 2. I think the minister's speech on was it Monday or Tuesday, we're clear that Kaneshi Lot 1 is from Accra Academy all the way to Pampron Junction. Lot 2 is from Bank of Ghana quarters all the way through the Abozuka and Spare Parts area, ICGC, all the way to the Odo connects to the Odo. Then we are doing some storm drains under the upgrading the three communities. So Akwiteman, there are some storm drains that we are working on. Achimota, Alobushi, there's a storm drain there that we are working on. Outside of that, we are not doing, and then related to these big storm drains, there are some small secondary drains and tertiary drains that are connecting to these big drains that will also see some improvements. That's the limit of the scope of the work that we are doing. The activities that we've done cleanups in Alobushi. How many cleanups have we done? About 3 or so. We've done cleanups where we have videos and all of that. We have all of that. But if people tell you they don't know anything about it, well, we've done even the groundbreaking we did last year. Very eventful, very noisy. So many people were there. If people insist they don't know anything about the project, well, we'll continue to increase our visibility. But that said, we have also set up what we call the community development committees in those communities, which has representatives of all the stakeholders, so traditional authority, youth groups, women's groups, faith-based organizations. All of them form the community development committee, which is an allied arm of the project. They are not staff. These are people that we want to create an interface with the community so that we don't appear as just foreign people who come and just impose things on them. So throughout the planning process, we've worked with this committee. They've provided feedback. So we hear the feedback, we will go back and intensify the engagements. I mean, there's nothing like poor communication. I mean, in terms of working with people, we'll always go back and increase our efforts in that regard. With the Ministry of Defense at Bema Camp. We did that last week. They had a 3-day session at Bema Camp last week because the drones also have security implications, and therefore they have to go through that training as well. So now that they are done, they will begin to operationalize it for development control, for monitoring of the buffers. As I said, we have a situation where currently, all put together, we have over 5,000 properties sitting within 50 meters of the buffer, the main Odo channel. There are other water bodies, smaller water bodies, also running through these respective jurisdictions. And the assemblies always do not have the personnel to go chasing the development, to enforcing development control and so on. Sometimes it's logistics, they don't have a vehicle and so on. So the technology upgrade is to enhance that capacity. And so it's expected that they will start deploying that. As we said at the launch then, the RCC and LUSPA will also have oversight of the operations of the assemblies. And then Ghana Civil Aviation will also look at how, there will always be a record whenever you're flying. So we will be able to monitor to see that indeed they are using them for the purposes as has been prescribed. Because you have to log in, you have to log your flight details before you set off. It has been signed. So the disbursements are proceeding. For example, if we didn't have the funds, we couldn't have signed the Kaneshi contract because we didn't have funds at the time. But since then, so the award letters have been issued to the contractors, the 2 contractors. One has submitted the acceptance letter. They are supposed to then bring their performance guarantee. Once they bring it, we sign the contracts. They are ready to go.
Thank you for watching Nation One TV. Kindly subscribe for more news updates.